hold your peace. So welcome first and foremost. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it that you guys are making some time for us. So what we want to do today is tell you a bit about ourselves first and foremost, and then go into the main topic of our webinar, which is facing those business challenges head on and explaining to you how Microkeeper can help you along the way. So I'll introduce you to Jon, or I'll let Jon introduce himself. He's the other representative of Microkeeper being here today. So Jon, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Dane. Yeah, hi guys, nice to see everybody's here. Yeah, Microkeeper, I sort of run our customer liaison with all of our customers really, and I sort of deal with sort of high level points of where you want to see the product going, listen to where the pain points are, and just offer our sort of insight into where we think the product can best suit and best help the circumstance potentially that the business is currently in, or how we can actually help with the pain points. So definitely a role in which I actually love it. I love meeting business owners, payroll officers, CFOs, CEOs, anybody in that space, and just everyone's got a different story of where they have come from, what they're looking to solve, and how they want to use the product. And it really is that sort of discovery session. You sort of say to someone, this is what you want to solve A, B, C, and then usually that morphs into a number of other things as the conversation evolves. Obviously learning about the product as well, and themselves, learning about their products and learning about what they do as a business also really interests me. So yeah, that's sort of a bit about what my role is at Microkeeper. Outside of that, I'm an avid cyclist, and yeah, you'll see me down the coast cycling usually most mornings, and that's what I like to do. I've got a young family. I've got a young son, and yeah, and that's sort of how a bit about me and my role at Microkeeper.
Perfect. And my name is Stijn. That's weirdly enough how that's written. I'm originally from Belgium, so that's where the weird name comes from. I mainly focus on Microkeeper's marketing and community, which is something that we've been wanting to grow over the last year. We've started up a partner program, an expert program with accountants and bookkeepers, business advisors lately as well. So I'm a bit active in that field. You can also find me quite active on the Twitter sphere, where I've actually already met some of you guys, and on LinkedIn as well. So if you ever want to reach out, you can probably find me there. Outside of work, at the moment, I'm not getting up to a whole lot because of the reality of the situation. That all I can really do is indeed go for an hour of sporting a day, and that usually is walking with my wife. Luckily, we live in a beautiful place, close to the beach, so we count our blessings. So that's nice. A bit about what you guys can expect from us today. So what we'll do is first we'll jump into a bit of background about us. What is Microkeeper, for the people who don't know us? Then we'll get into the grunt of what we're here for today. Firstly, some tactics on how to deal with unexpected changes, and we've had a lot of unexpected changes this year. Tactics we've observed from the hundreds of businesses that we deal with, and things that we see work well in out there in the real world. Then we'll jump into some tools that we offer at Microkeeper that can help during this time, and also get you ready for the situation as it will arise after this whole COVID situation is done, but also in general, how you can kind of use Microkeeper to streamline and be more efficient with your work. And then we'll jump into a discussion, some frequently asked questions, but also if you guys have any questions at that point, you can ask them us there. All right. So what does Microkeeper do? I think Jon is probably the best person to take us through that on a high level overview, so you guys actually know what our product is and a bit of an idea of what we do.
For sure. So Microkeeper is what we sort of refer to as total end-to-end employee management. So from a point of view of when an employee is recruited, they've been granted the position. We want to start with what we call our core HR and our employee onboarding / self-service. So from that point of view, again, with the current situation that we're in, people can do this from the comfort of their own home, their own PC, tablet, or...
Oh, I've lost you there for a second. I don't know if anyone else can. Oh, Jon was
It might be from a point of view of a staff member, needing to do certain tasks. So reviewing, employment contracts, uploading certain documentation around licensing, skill sets, etc., or even things like, a COVID check per se that they may have to do on a daily / weekly basis. All can be conducted within. From there, we can definitely move to. Businesses they may need. So a business may want something along the lines of, oh, I need to have a an induction or whatever. That can be fully customized in our onboarding section for that particular staff member and business, and what the requirements are and what we're trying to achieve. From there, we move to our time and attendance. So we do offer a number of options when it comes to attendance. So whether that is something along the lines of, a facial recognition unit or a fingerprint scan unit or near field communication, we can definitely look at all types of things. And not only is it maybe for touchless, it might be also based on location, that you need to be able to clock on from a vast variety of different areas in the business. And then we also have people that sort of say to us, well, what about if we have poor internet? So we also have options of devices that can be used in an internet down / patchy internet environment. So once we've got the time and attendance, we've got the onboarding, we then may look at something like, okay, we're going to start the employee journey in our business and roster them. So being that we are a payroll system, our rosters and all of our payroll rules do collate together, and we overlay all of that information in a roster. Once that's then complete and distributed, whether that is via a sync to their calendar suite or whether it is by push or SMS, the staff member will receive it, and we have some options there. So whether the staff member needs to accept that offer to continue and to notify the business that they will be attending, they can definitely do such things. Obviously, they then come in and they'll start clocking their hours via any of the methods that you've made available to that particular staff member, which is great. Once that has then been completed, we then collate that data in the timesheet system, which we overlay against the roster data if you are rostering. From that point of view, a manager can definitely come through and do a review, but we can also get the system to do a review. So we can do auto approvals, automated rounding. We can do what's called a clocking window and a number of other things. From here, our payroll system or award interpretation engine takes over, and it turns that time and attendance data into payroll data by overlaying rule sets that a business has configured. Once all of those rule sets have been run and pay slips have been generated, we then do another test. So it's another analysis, and we are analysing things like this week versus last week, ordinary time earnings, etc., to make sure that we're pointing out to the payroll officer or officers what exactly the issues are within the payroll that the system has automatically picked up. From there, we can then look at doing a backup. We can obviously download an ABA for payment and submit STP with literally 3 clicks. Once that's all complete and we've distributed the pay slips through to the team, we can then move to our reporting, which finishes off that payroll scenario, and and we send the data either through to our accounting suite or we download it to upload it into that system. And the last final thing that we usually would do on a semi-regular basis would be completing our superannuation. So superannuation clearing is very, very simple through Microkeeper. We definitely like to do a number of checks to make sure that from a super point of view, it's all going to go through in a correct manner, so that you're not going to get a refund 3 months down the track and you have to do a check. So the idea being that we can check that information, that everything is true and correct based on this current time, and prior to you actually submitting it. And then again, just a simple confirming of the amount, ticking a checkbox, and away you go. And the last element that we offer in the reporting is all your standardized reports. So whether it's payroll tax, whether it's payroll summaries, whether it's entitlement summaries, whether it's summaries based on jobs or locations that staff members are working at, hours and costs, superannuation breakdowns, etc. We have all of those available, not only via viewable on the Microkeeper platform itself, but we can download them as a CSV or a printable PDF. The other element of the platform, obviously, that encompasses all of these things is our API. So we do have an API that is accessible by our clients, and definitely different businesses use different elements of that. So whether you are looking at using the timesheet API, the roster API, the add employee API, or the functions around payroll and reporting, all of the data can be accessed via a third party through our API. So yeah, definitely you've got all of those things in one.
A big platform which definitely handles everything in one go. So we like to say it handles all touch points between employers and employees in a sense. So yeah, definitely thank you for that explanation, John. It's definitely quite a lot that the platform does. From a mission perspective, what we want to do at Microkeeper is be people-centered. Software is obviously like a big thing in our lives these days. Like many people, you don't necessarily call for a taxi. You jump on Uber. You don't go to the bank as much anymore. You might just do that all on your app. So software is definitely a part that is a big part of people's lives, but we don't want to lose that focus on the end user or the people that are involved. So what we want to do is create a platform that centralizes, like I said, all those touch points between an employer and an employee, making it easier for businesses to grow their teams and to grow. That doesn't necessarily have to be in numbers, but just run a positive business, I suppose. Using automation every step of the way to free up time for professionals. So making sure that we streamline everything and make it easy to use, so that ultimately people gain time at the end of the day. Help people tackle the payroll pain points, and we'll come back to some of those at a later stage today as well, which pain points have been, in this situation, for instance, come up. Another big part of what we do, why we want to be people-centered, or how we want to be people-centered rather, is through our phone service. So I know a lot of software businesses just jump on like chat or email, but we want to make sure that we keep that one-on-one service there, and that personal element of really building a relationship with a person on the other side of the line, and having someone that knows your business and can help you along the way, or your client's business, if you're approaching it from an accountant or bookkeeper's perspective. Ultimately, we want to create a positive experience for all users along the way. That's both employers and employees. We do quite well in that regard. I'm proud to say, looking across our ratings, we often see things like people saying, look, we used to use 3 separate manual programs, but we've now brought that together in Microkeeper in the one platform. Employees that also mention, look, we can use it easily for looking at our rosters and flipping between our pay slips, and people that use it for the payroll perspective, that they actually reduce the time processing payroll, and the fact that we do the phone support. So we're always glad to see that what we set out to do is actually something that we're achieving, and that people are responding positively to it. Now into what we're here for today. So hopefully you've known us gotten to know us now a little bit and what we do. And what we were here for today is basically making sure that we help people tackle the pain points of this situation, of unexpected situations in that you can run into in business. Now, I think obviously it's important that we first acknowledge that businesses have been impacted by this period this year. Like it's been a year like no other, and like it obviously depends a lot on where you're located and where your clients are, and like Australia has been hit pretty hard in Victoria, whereas other locations might have escaped a little bit easier. But I do want to acknowledge the fact that it's real. I know that, like, yeah, we want to focus on the positives, but I don't just want to glance over the reality of the situation. We deal with hundreds of employers, so we're very aware that this has been a fragile time for many people. Employers have had to deal with JobKeeper issues, and I think if you're here, you probably all remember that at a certain point it felt like the guidelines around it, they were changing almost every day at a certain point. We definitely felt that. There have been pay issues for people, whether it's chasing outstanding invoices or paying wages while income has been dwindling. Obviously, in some areas there have been leave issues with people having been unavailable during their quarantine, or maybe needing to take unpaid leave while on a forced break. Yeah, and I think it's also safe to say that many managers have had to deal with staff morale in general. Mental health is definitely something to be very aware of during a situation where a whole country is affected and going through a crisis. There's also just literally the idea of, like, look, are we going to survive this as a business? Especially for those who've been forced to lock down operations. So a lot of issues from that side of the situation. And on the other end of the spectrum, we've also had clients that have gone through unexpected massive growth all of a sudden. People in the cleaning industry, producers of protective gear, hand sanitizer, some of those clients have had issues that go hand in hand with that, like a sudden spike in onboarding new staff members, and the implementation and management of new workplace procedures. So yeah, there's definitely the reality of the situation is that it's been a time that has impacted us as a country, and I think around the world. So the reason why I want to acknowledge that first before moving on is because we definitely don't want to minimize the fact that all of these things have been happening, and the impacts of COVID in this situation have been real, and many of these issues haven't had or won't even have clear-cut answers. But what we do want to do is take the lessons that we can take in those situations that are of unexpected change and turn those into opportunities, taking those challenges and turning them to opportunities for growth. So first of all, I'll jump into a few tactics, and then Jon will take us through some of the tools that we offer at Microkeeper. If at any point in time you say, look, I want to interject, or I have an example of this, feel free to drop it in the chat as well. I'd love to hear a bit of how you guys have been experiencing this situation. So that's definitely welcome if you guys want to interject. The main focus, and something that I've myself actually have been focusing on, is controlling the controllables, and I think that's something that both in tactics and in tools will come forward as a great way of dealing with unexpected change. So jumping into tactics, like, the reality of COVID is that it's not the first crisis in human history, and it probably also won't be the last. And in true Darwinian form, it's obviously the ones that are most adaptable to change that do well in situations like that. So adaptability is a big survival strategy, and that's no different in business than it is in nature. And we want to take some of those tactics and explore them a little bit more in detail. And if you're like us in software, like, the word agile is definitely something that during the last few years has been a buzzword, and I think it's clear that in this situation, agility is actually a big metric for success. Adaptability is helping you deal with those situations. So agility around three core focuses or three core parts of your business or your client business. What is it that you do? Who are you actually doing it with, and how do you do it? So the first part of that is what is it that you do? So rapid innovation is an important part of dealing with a crisis, especially in a situation like this where it's been a drastic change that affects a lot of people. You'll see that there's a lot more openness to change, and so being quick in those changes and making those decisions quickly will actually result in a positive outcome. Now, I know that we're already quite a way through this situation, so that in a sense might not be a key tactic at this point anymore, but in saying that, people don't expect perfection in situations like this. An example that I've got here is, I don't know if you can see that on my screen, it might be a little bit small, but it's Bloom Coffee in Melbourne, which is a coffee shop that was obviously hit by the restrictions in hospo, and they decided, look, you know what, we'll turn into a greengrocer. They did an announcement at the end of March saying, look, we'll be changing from basically this setup to making a change to all of a sudden going to this setup. So basically being very flexible in what they do, and doing that quickly, making that pivot, and there's another buzzword, doing that quickly. And the way you can do that is by asking yourself a couple of questions. We've had to do that ourselves as well at Microkeeper, and we've asked ourselves those questions too. In this situation, for this greengrocer, the questions here that I've written down is, look, what parts of my business are most at risk during the crisis? They obviously couldn't have people sitting in their business anymore and have their food and have their coffees inside. So that's a big part that's at risk. What part of my business is most suited to adapt to that change? So quite literally in this situation, they've gone like, well, people are not going to be sitting inside anymore. So we all of a sudden have this space that turns into a part that's adaptable. Then ask yourself, what's the most ideal situation for your clients in a situation like that? And what steps do I need to take to get there? And what are the fastest ways to bridge the gaps between what the reality of the situation is in this situation to get to this situation? And that can look very different for you and your business, obviously. We ourselves at Microkeeper, one of the ways that we track time in attendance is with a fingerprint scanner. And that obviously for us was an at-risk situation during COVID, because joint surfaces was a big, or is still, I suppose, a big point where people can pass this virus. So what we did was like, okay, well, we have to adapt in that sense. And what would that look like in a situation like this would be for us to go like, okay, well, we need to find a way that people can clock their hours without sharing any surfaces. And while we had some of those in place already with our app and the browser where people just use their own personal devices, we also have a lot of businesses that use a lot of stuff and that clock on from a central location at the same time. So that what did we do? Like, okay, well, we look at an ideal solution would be to have people just to do that automatically without touching anything. And we worked together with some partners and came up with a touchless time and attendance tracking with facial recognition. And John might jump into that a little bit later. But just to go like, okay, these are the steps that we took. And I think within 2 or so weeks after we first really realized the severity of the situation, we made that pivot in that part of the business. So it doesn't always have to be a massive pivot of the whole business, but just looking at what is at risk and what can we do to improve. So that's about what you do. Second step is about who you do it with. And like in many situations, facing a common enemy brings people together. Thinking of that movie the other day with Bruce Willis. Was it Armageddon? When you've got like the big rock, that's a big asteroid that's coming to Earth, and all of a sudden everyone has to work together to stop that from happening. And obviously, luckily, it's not that serious with this virus, but a common enemy does bring people together, and especially when it affects so many people. So that will lead to the possibility of working with different people and cooperating with different people. And that can come in many different shapes and forms. Like myself, I've been part of a few groups that join every week and even some every day to just chat and just support each other from a mental health perspective, but also just to talk business and how to adapt to these changes. There's been, as a group of apps that integrate with Xero, we've been talking to each other in a dedicated Slack channel, and people have been talking to each other. Look, how are you dealing with certain situations? What lessons can you share? So cooperation is something that doesn't always have to be like expressed through this example that I've got here. We're actually joining forces and selling stuff together, because I know not everyone is in that field either, but it can just be as simple as just sharing resources or learning from each other. So the example that I've got here, for instance, is indeed the City Box. That's something that's happened in Oklahoma in the US, where a business owner put together a City Box, and they've done multiple boxes where basically local people can support their area by just buying this box and supporting a bunch of businesses at the same time. And they've got a box for like a big night in, where they do like popcorn and like a DVD and stuff like that. So it's going back to the old days of just making it cozy inside. On the other hand, another example is this here, a street that has a lot of businesses like restaurants on it that were obviously suffering, and they made a good deal where basically they went like, okay, you buy this punch card for $35 and you can get takeaway from all these places and just let your punch card be punched, and basically share the profits accordingly. So by supporting one business, the people in the area can support all businesses at the same time. So cooperation between people is another tactic that you can use to thwart this crisis. Questions that you can ask yourself in that stage is, look, who in my industry or outside of my industry is facing a similar crisis? Can I reach out to them? Should I speak to them? And it can be as simple as picking up the phone and going, hey, how are you going? And let that conversation happen naturally. You can obviously think of ways that you can create a win-win situation to work together and boost the bottom line, but in saying that, it can be as simple as supporting each other through conversation and just learning from each other on how to deal with situations like that. So that's who you work with. And then lastly, that I wanted to put a bit of focus on is like how you work. So all of a sudden during a crisis, and whether it's this crisis or a previous one or the next, long-held policies might all of a sudden be questioned. And having said that, that doesn't mean that every policy should be shifted. Adapting policies is not always something that makes sense, but during this time, it actually can make sense to review what you've been doing, whether you're doing forced downtime or whether you're just using this situation to go like, okay, you know what, actually, let's analyze how we've been running things and what we can adapt. We've seen, from a policy perspective, telehealth being widely accepted to grow. We've seen companies like Atlassian, which is another Australian-based software platform, that have basically told their employees, okay, from now on, we don't actually need you to come into the office at all anymore. If you want to work from home, you can. Also going forward, so not expecting people back once the pandemic ends, which actually opens them up to hiring more talent from across the nation. So it's they're policies that can be reviewed, and how you operate is sometimes something that's up for review, and during a downtime or during a crisis actually makes sense to look into that. So questions that you can ask yourself in that stage is, look, which policies have made it harder for me to adapt to the changing environment? And if they have, then do they make sense to keep in place, or should we be changing them? Is there room for more flexibility in general in my operations? Like, are there certain things that I'm just keeping rigid because that's how we've always done it? Or am I actually having a good reason for doing certain things? So to during this time, kind of just see this as an opportunity to analyze what you've been doing. And I know that if you run a business, at least people that we speak to often say, look, I'll have time at a later stage. I'll wait till I've got some time to look into this. If you're going through a forced lockdown or just a downtime in general, it is a good time to actually make time for that. Like a sitting duck obviously is not going to be successful in this situation. It's about, look, how can we best future-proof the situation that we do, how we run business, and how can we get ready for the next stage. And on that note, I think we want to offer you some tools and give you the opportunity to see how, or what we offer rather, to make sure that you can get out of those starting blocks fast. I was telling Jon yesterday, look, I saw a video the other day about the world record of Usain Bolt, and the biggest contributing factor to his world record is actually the way that he gets out of the starting blocks. That's where he makes the most gain, I suppose, on his competitors. And so to get everything in place to make sure that you're ready to get out of the starting blocks again is something that we want to help you with. So Jon, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to stop presenting and hand the reins to you and mute myself. And of course, like, if anyone has any questions during Jon's segment as well, feel free to ask them in the chat, and I will be monitoring that from there.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to modifying and pivoting, as quickly as potentially possible, it's one thing to be able to do it, but I think the second thing that is somewhat forgotten is having the ability to do it. So it's okay to have an ideal to go to. So, we need to go to touchless clocking or something like that, but also to have the ability to be able to do such things. So we definitely at Microkeeper have tried to facilitate that by adding additional features to the system to help businesses make that pivot and actually make the pivot possible. One of the things that it was quite amusing that I saw from a point of view of one of our clients had mentioned to me. They sort of said, "Oh, we've always been a thought of a rainy day fund," and I sort of didn't quite cotton on, but then I sort of, as they start to explain it to me, I did understand, what they meant was, in essence, sometimes we look at things from a point of view and say, it's not enough. Like it's changing to X solution, we might save a little bit of money or we might save a little bit of time, but it's not enough for us. What they do is they concentrate on all of the percenters, but you could sort of say the 1 to 5 percenters as well. So anything that they can streamline their business and make it more agile, more responsive, they do it. And that's what they sort of say their rainy day fund is. So if they're pushing to the most efficient, they know that from a point of view of an individual, we know that we've got the absolute best out of what we're currently doing. We don't have to think, oh, maybe we should have gone with that solution, or maybe we should have implemented something else to make it more efficient. They just try and do everything as efficient as possible, so that if at the end of the day they do get to a point in time, and it could be, you could be a massive corporate, and it could be turning hundreds of millions of dollars, but you don't want to save $50,000, and then a crisis comes along like this, and it's like, well, we could have saved that. That would have been good if we had have done that 4 years ago, because that 4 years of savings might have been 200,000, and at this point it actually is something it's very, very much in our face, and it's like, well, that could be of interest. So it was something that in our exploration of what we've been doing and speaking with our clients, something that's definitely come up. And obviously, as Stain mentioned earlier on, there's definitely a lot of features in the platform, but a lot in the I suppose current weeks that have been much more widely adopted. So if we look through a few of them, one of the biggest concerns at the moment, and Stain obviously touched on it, is we've got people who have to come to work still. They can't work from home, so they have to work at our organisation. So how can we accommodate for those people? And I suppose on the other side of the spectrum is, how can we accommodate for the people that actually do have to work from home, and how can we keep that person engaged, I suppose, giving them the flexibility to do hours from home, and bearing in mind other things that they may need to do from home, and other implications that homework can throw up. So obviously we do have the browser option, which is been usually formally used around businesses that are in an office space and people are behind computers all of the time, and usually restricting via IP address. But obviously we can stretch that out and say, okay, well, now we've got a number of people that need to work, they're working from behind a computer, so this is a good option that I can clock on, and I can have a look from home. So that's not a problem. We also have the app, which has been widely used obviously through businesses, and still giving that staff member the ability to work from home and have everything in their pocket. The other thing that this enables too is, we still have businesses that may be stationed at home, but they may still commute to might go to a library or something like that to do certain works or whatever they might do, and it just gives them that additional flexibility. Obviously, fingerprint scan, from our side, has definitely taken a wee bit of a hit, being that it's a communal surface. But then businesses have adapted, and they've said, well, what hygiene policies can we put in place to prevent the spread? So, additional cleaning of the finger scan surface, but as well as having a sanitization station after the scan. So you're simply scanning on the fingerprint, and you're sanitizing your hand and moving away. So, preventing that transmission to whatever action you're doing. Near field communication has definitely had a bit of a boost, being that it is a touchless option. And for those employees that still have to function from a workplace, let's say, environment, this is a good solution. But the final sort of one that, again, Stain made mention of earlier is facial recognition, which we've definitely seen a massive uptake. Facial recognition is a great solution. Originally coming out with facial recognition, and you press basically a clock on button, but then what we did was pivot relatively quickly and have the ability for you to not touch at all. So simply stand in front of the unit, it'll recognize your face, and then it'll either clock you on or clock you off. So that is a really, really good solution for businesses that have a situation where you still have to come to work, and we want to keep those common surfaces to a minimum. The other thing that this also offers, and has been an addition by the facial recognition team, is a temperature screen as well. So we definitely have seen this in again, businesses where it's hard to keep the social distancing. So certain businesses have had the ability during the crisis to continue to facilitate, a service that needs to, an essential service, but they have an exemption from the social distancing because physically they can't, to continue with an essential service, whether it be, food production or whether it be dispatch of food and so forth, they need to be in that production line environment or whatever the case is. So to have that addition of temperature screening, is a vital situation and thing. And it just shows that we're trying to do as much as we possibly can from a business point of view to protect our community. I suppose the other side of what we've sort of seen from a point of view of adapting is, I suppose it's been something that's been commonly spoken about in this whole pandemic, is keeping people together while keeping us apart. And I think from our point of view, the catch-ups and platforms online that do allow us to stay together. And I think it's important that we, yes, we want to keep focus on our business and trying to push through a situation like this, and and pivot and modify. But I think it's very, very important as well for us to come together and be still together in that environment, in that work environment where you do have your colleagues, you do communicate together. And from a Microkeeper point of view, internally we have our morning catch-up meetings, and we're always chatting across, whether it is a video link or whether it is via a chat system or it is via the phone. So I think just continuing those actions, to know that it is very, very easy to, I suppose, forget and just get into the zone of what you're trying to do, but forget that environment that a lot of people really thrive on. And Stain touched on a few things which involve sort of the mental health side of it. Definitely keeping people together while keeping them apart, and we're in a very fortunate position that we've got all of that, and we've got things at our disposal to be able to keep everyone together. So I think that's a really good a really good component of the online environment. And I suppose I've always been of the opinion that let's try and take some good out of what's happening at the moment. And if, like Stain was saying, for businesses, a big comment that we've heard, and personally myself have heard from businesses who sort of thought that maybe the work from home thing, if you said, oh, I'm going to work from home on Thursday or something like that, that was maybe taken as, oh, he wants to have a bit of a slack day, or she wants to have an easier day from home, or really she's got other things, or he's got other things on. I think that mentality has definitely pivoted and changed, because we can definitely see now, because we're forced into a situation, that people can actually be very, very productive from home. So if that's a takeaway, and as I said, many businesses have told us that obviously have the ability to work from home, that is a big takeaway, that, let's ensure that, if someone does need to take that home day, that's not, a down. We're not looking at that as a down. That's something that we can work with, and we've done it. We've done it in the past. So the ability to be able to hire people, as Stain mentioned, from anywhere around the world or the country or whatever it is, it just opens our doors to having the best possible team that we can have, because now geographically, if it's obviously possible, we can use people from anywhere. One of the things that I'd like to do is, I'm just going to jump into the platform here, and the employee onboarding. So the employee onboarding area of Microkeeper has definitely been used exceptionally more heavily during this time. So whether it is up in the skills and files, updating things. So, we've now got a new hygiene policy. We need everyone to watch this video. Or, we've got some sort of check. Or, we've got the ability for you to actually facilitate a clocking hours and tell us what jobs you're working on, so that we can still again, manage what people are doing, where they're working and wherever they are. One thing that we've definitely seen a spike in use is our messaging system down here. So people, again, staying connected while they're apart, using that messaging tool, conversating with each other, conversating around work, collaborating still has been a key component in the platform itself. So, from a Microkeeper point of view, other tools that we want to do is we want to help during a time like this streamline. And the way we do that is through the automation of our platform. And the automation of our platform, because we are that sort of end-to-end, if you like, employee management, is converting the actual attendance of a person through to timesheet data. And once that timesheet data has come through to the platform like this, it becomes very, very simple for a manager anywhere at all to review it. So, the manager doesn't have to be sitting in the confines of an office. They can do this from anywhere. So potentially enabling, that office space to have the 50-50 or that social distancing ability, but still being able to maintain what I need to do. The analysis around time and attendance and rostering, again, helping us streamline so we can have less people potentially doing certain tasks, and maybe that can help us because we need other people and we need to pivot and we need to put people into learning over a new area of our business, and we can have this other person managing more staff members because we've got the ability for the platform to do it. Obviously from here we want to then automate the process of payroll, and the way we do that is through our reward interpretive engine. So our engine basically looks at all of the time and attendance data, or it even looks prior to that at a staff member, and it says, well, how are we paying them? Are we paying them off a time and attendance, off a set roster or schedule, or are we paying them a salary? From that, we then can look at things like award interpretive rules, apply them over that time and attendance data, and then create our pay slips. Once we have created our pay slips in the platform, we then do some analysis, and the analysis is around what we're currently looking at. So where the people are sitting in the platform, how many hours this week versus last week, and potentially if we're a bit detached, we sort of need to be able to do this analysis relatively accurately and quickly while doing our payroll. So this is a report that we've had up for quite some time, but definitely has been more readily used, being that we are a little bit more detached, so it can do that overall analysis for us to make sure that our payroll is correct. Once that's then done, obviously our pay slips have been created and we can do our reviews. Once our reviews are all complete on our pay slips, it's as simple as downloading our payment file and uploading that into our banking system and paying everyone all at once. STP has been a massive thing with this pandemic, and again, there was just different things being released by the government as they were trying to be agile and pivot and make sense of this and what they were going to do. So the JobKeeper was introduced, and submitting it all through STP. It may have been a bit of a learning curve at the start, but I think from something that was exceptionally quickly done, there wasn't a huge amount of thought. It was, what tools do we have? What could we do? How could we do it? I think it was executed relatively well, and relatively seamlessly for people to start to get a little bit of relief where they could through STP. So obviously Microkeeper having the ability to distribute pay slips electronically, and then obviously lodge our STP electronically as well through the platform. All of obviously our reporting information can either be, as I mentioned earlier, sent via API to our accounting suite, or a download upload depending on the capabilities of that suite, and then obviously the integration through to superannuation clearing is all on the Microkeeper system. So making it exceptionally easy to, again, complete this task from absolutely anywhere, and know that our staff are going to get paid their superannuation for the hours that they've worked, and we can do the validation around that. So once that's all complete, obviously we can still run analysis from our system and check what we anticipated, maybe from some benchmarking. We're all going to look at the appropriate information that we need from here around our staff and the money that we're spending versus maybe a projection, or how are we going to get back to it. And I think the final touch point that I'll mention today is having the ability to rapidly either scale or rapidly descale is something that I think you need to be able to achieve very, very quickly. So again, around the tool side, it's having the systems in place that will allow you to do things. So if you do need to dump staff very, very quickly, or you do need to be able to pay people JobKeeper in a very, very quick manner, or get them to be able to sign documentation in a quick manner. Having systems in the background to be able to do this is crucial, to be able to react exceptionally quickly, and definitely something that's come through our channels, that's what people are trying to achieve. So Microkeeper does give you that ability to scale up very, very quickly, or descale depending on your requirements, and obviously keep that touch with your staff members, and I suppose the flexibility of being able to work from anywhere, if that gives you, if your business can adapt to something like that. So from a point of view of tools, I'll sort of wrap up there to give us a little bit of time for some questioning at the end. But yeah, that's sort of an overview of how we've seen it and what we've tried to do to improve the processes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jon. If this is probably the time, if you want to pop yourself off mute, if you've got any questions, to shoot it in. Maybe I can start with one question while people are thinking of questions, or writing them in a chat, or unmuting themselves. Is one of the things, Jon, that I liked is what we've seen is when the requirement came in for like a daily checkup for people to follow certain rules. Microkeeper, what we did was put something in place for staff to sign off on. Is that something that you can show us while we're waiting for people to come up with questions? Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I can definitely show you that. That was something that our our graphics team did come up with. Was one of the things was like a self check, a COVID self check. So what we thought was, hey, let's build into the background some a template in which Microkeeper has built, and that you can modify and help to your own personal business requirements. So again, just in the skill set section of Microkeeper, you can select from a template, which is this one here, and we can see there's a bit of a graphical representation of what we're trying to do around a COVID check, to make sure that a staff member hasn't been in the wrong place or hasn't been in close contact, to try and keep the rest of our team safe. Additions that we added to this specific area was what we call the auto approval. So in the past, a skill like this would have had to have been signed off by a manager. In this case, there's no real need to sign this off, because someone's either said yes, they have been in contact, or no, they haven't. And if they've said either one of those things, you don't need to really check up on. So yeah, definitely another thing that we've done. Yeah, great, awesome. That's then something that can come in when people clock on, and they can just basically see that, and you can make that a critical thing for people to clock on. So that's great. I've got a question here, Jon, from Sam, asking how can you integrate contractors into this system and also monitor super for them where they are individuals, and can they use the roster system too? So basically dealing with contractors within the Microkeeper platform. Is that something you can expand on a little bit? Of course, yeah, definitely can. So with regards to what we'd call in essence a user of the platform, we can set them to what we call subcontractor. Now, usually that is more around the hours, counting the hours. So we usually see it for like a labour hire scenario, where they might have a contract labour hire company, and we just want to collate the hours, and then we can send off collated hours. But you do raise a valid point when it comes to superannuation. What we can do is, if they are working higher than that threshold where you do have to pay them superannuation, at this point in time, it isn't an automated function where we will just collate the super for that once they go over that threshold, because it is a percentage of total hours for an entire year. What we can do is we can add super to their payment. So on the payslip, I'll just jump into one, and granted,
I'll just unlock the week, my bad. Here, we've got the button here of Add Super. So for any staff member, whether it is an employee or whether it is a contractor, when we build like a payslip, or in essence, what would look like an invoice for a subcontractor, we do have the Add Super button. So we can add super to that particular payment, and it'll also process through the clearinghouse to the fund appropriate to that staff member.
Awesome. I hope that answered your question a little bit, Sam. Obviously, if you want more in-depth information, if anyone wants to, you can always reach out to us via the Microkeeper contact page on the website, or just give us a call or email us. If anyone has any other questions, we're obviously happy to answer those as well. You can unmute yourself if you want, but if not, then that's absolutely fine as well. We want to be mindful of your time, obviously, as well. I want to thank you for for giving us an hour of your time, and hopefully some of the things that we've said rang through to you, and true to you rather, and helped you put some of the situation into perspective, and gave you some pointers on how to turn the thinking into a positive situation. Perfect. Thank you, Harmony, for saying that. Thank you for your time as well. Feel free to reach out to us on the socials as well. Miranda, the recording will be available. So we have been recording the meeting, and we will be sending both the meeting and the slides to anyone who registered for the meeting. I've got all the email addresses there. And if you want some one-on-one information from, that will be Jon, most likely. If you want to see how Microkeeper can work in a specific situation in your business or your clients' businesses, then we obviously happily make some time available to chat to you. Because like I said at the very start, we want to be a people-focused platform, and one of the things is helping people with the whole situation with Microkeeper. Because obviously, like, I know if you're looking into a software system from the first time, it might be a bit daunting, but we offer support and training along the way, both for our partners and our clients. So that was all for us today. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and we hope to see you around on the social. Follow us on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. You can find us there, and we look forward to getting to know you guys better. Thank you.
Thanks heaps, guys.
Cheers.